Star Wars Visions is a collection of unrelated Star Wars short stories that aired for 9 episodes on Disney Plus. And today, I'm gonna tell you what happens in each one and rank them against each other. So, without further ado, let's begin. The Ninth Jedi. Just like a classic Star Wars story, the universe has lost its balance, and the Jedi are in a disadvantage and unarmed to fight the Sith. But, in amidst despair, a guy named Juro, who lives in a planet full of kyber crystals, sends a message to all the remaining Jedi asking them to come to his planet because he'll give them the lightsabers they need to face the evil forces. The Jedi show up to the place, and while the mechanic is finishing the sabers, enemies show up to take them. He then sends his daughter to the Jedi encounter so she can give them the lightsabers and help them protect the universe. She shows up and delivers the sabers, just to find out that most of these Jedi were actually Sith in disguise, and so her, one Jedi, and Juro fight against all these Sith and win. And then they are set on an adventure to save the galaxy, and also one of the Sith turns sides amidst the battle. The story in and of itself isn't very involving, and the fights could have been a little better. None of the characters are very charismatic, but the plot twist really caught me off guard, I have to admit it. I liked the way they used the Star Wars lore, but in the end, it didn't feel like it lived up to the quality of the other stories, and thus stands here as the worst episode of the show. Lop Ochõ. Lop is an immigrant slave who is adopted by Ochõ and her father. 7 years go by with them living side by side. And during this time, the Empire has used and explored the natural resources of their planet with the excuse of using it for progress. The father is thoroughly against the Empire doing this, but Ochõ supports it. This leads to a division in the family, and Ochõ ends up as an ally of the Empire. The father in this situation decides to give the family heritage, a lightsaber, to Lop, and he goes to face Ochõ and stop her and the Empire. As he's about to lose, Lop shows up to fight her sister. Ochõ feels very angry that the adopted kid got the lightsaber instead of her, and the fight goes on until Lop eventually wins and Ochõ flees with the Empire's help. The episode is okay. The fights are nice, but not as good as some of the ones that are still to come. And the message that the episode wants to pass is an interesting one that still arises questions to this day, which is, should you listen to your parents or follow your own path? And the same is true for the parents. Should I teach them this or learn that things are different nowadays? One way or the other, the discussion is a good one, but wasn't really well developed in this episode. Not one time does the father or Lop think that maybe Ochõ is right. Not one time do they try to understand her. Not one time do they try to support her before just saying shit to her. Even though the message is cool, the development of the episode could have been much better, and so it stands as the second worst of all of them. The Village Bride. Here we are introduced to a Jedi who's on a mission in a planet where the main inhabitants were made victims of a fascist force. The princess of the planet, though, offered herself as a hostage so that her people could live in peace. We learn that this population can use the Force in a very different way. They use it to see memories of a place, how it looked like, what kinds of plants and animals lived there, and what events happened in that place. But they don't use it, or at least don't know how to use it, as a weapon. So, at the end of the episode, as the princess is about to be taken, and the evil forces are going to kill her and her people, the Jedi shows up and defeats them all. It's good, not the best Star Wars story of them all, but it had a great character in the Jedi that they introduced. Her katana-like lightsaber and high heels powered by the Force looked great, and her power level was pretty outstanding, to be honest. She's one of, if not the best character in this show. The planet and their citizens are also very interesting, especially considering the fact that they used the Force in a way that feels much more natural and in sync with what the definition of the Force actually is. They channel their power together with the nature surrounding them to look at the past and at the memories of a place, seeing how a forest was burned down, or how a mountain suffered and changed through time, or how people used to live in that place. And this was a very good addition to the abilities that the Force can grant to some of its users. But even though these aspects were great, the story still left a lot to be desired, and looked like an episode of any adventure type of show. And since stories aren't just made out of cool characters and powers, this episode lands safely in the 7th spot. The Elder. A Jedi and his Padawan feel a disturbance in the Force, and go to investigate it. The Padawan is eager to find and fight with the person who caused this disturbance. So, when they arrive at the planet, the Padawan goes after that man, who might, for all we know, be a Sith, while his master stays at the man's ship in case he returns. The Padawan finds and fights against that man, and is easily defeated, but the master shows up a bit later and is able to finish the deal, killing the Sith. The episode was good. The story was a very easy and simple way of portraying the different perspectives on what power is. The fights were good. The villain was kinda okay, and it left a good message in the end. It's a good episode, but doesn't make itself very memorable, and thus stays with the 6th place. TOB1. A professor lives in a desert planet with his droids, and he uses them as help to bring nature and life back to this place. One of these droids is an avid Jedi fan who strives to become one, and when searching through the professor's stuff, he finds a spaceship, and unknowingly sends a signal that's intercepted by a Sith, who then comes to the planet to kill them. The professor reveals himself to be a Jedi and hides his droid TOB1 together with a lightsaber, and then leaves to fight the Sith. He dies in battle, and after the Sith leaves, TOB1 goes around the planet and finishes the professor's research, finally bringing life to this planet. At the end, the Sith comes back to fight him. TOB1 though is capable of using the professor's lightsaber, and thus wins the fight using the Force. It is the most touching episode of them all. The animation and sound effects are very different from your usual Star Wars content, so it really stands out in that aspect. And although the final result of the episode was good by bringing the topic of a droid being able to use the Force, the fight was a bit weird, and the story development didn't really work as much on that interesting topic that they had of a droid becoming a Jedi. And with all that said, TOB1 stands as the 5th best in our rank. Akakiri. In a country where the Sith have overthrown the monarch, a princess looks for help to get her position back and defeat the Sith. In her path, an old Jedi friend shows up, and together, they go reclaim her position. The Jedi though is not strong enough to win against the Sith, and while fighting her, he ends up cutting the princess. So in a desperate attempt to get her back to life, he turns to the dark side, and with the Sith's power and help, they bring her back from the dead. It is a very good episode. The way they showed the Jedi going to the dark side is really on point. It's not a completely one-sided thing like we have always seen with Star Wars, at least in the movies. I think this episode really did a nice job of exploring the nuances between the good and dark side by working with the Jedi character. And because of this, I'll leave it in the 4th place. Tatooine Rhapsody. It is an episode about a band of 7 members. They are hunted around the galaxy because Jabba is looking for one of them. Throughout the episode, he lets himself get captured to keep his friends safe. But those friends end up following him to his execution and show up for one last song before Jabba kills them all. So, after an amazing performance, they challenge Jabba to keep them alive so that they can keep playing for the whole galaxy to hear and enjoy it. Jabba seizes the opportunity and accepts the challenge. So, in the end, they are able to survive and keep doing what they dreamt of doing together. The episode has the usual shonen anime theme of friendship being highlighted, but what really got me was that not only do they solve their problems without fighting one single time, they also do it in a very clever way, without having to resort to any type of violence or some Deus Ex Machina type of resource. It's a pretty neat and self-contained story that leaves the tropes from Star Wars and tries to work with something new, and thus accomplishes the feat of getting the third position as the best Star Wars Visions episode, in my opinion, of course. The Twins. In this episode, we have two kids who are raised and created in the dark side. The sister is devoted and willing to sacrifice her life for the purpose of destruction of their opposers, while the brother is unwilling to see his beloved sister dying while trying to live the life that someone else wanted for her. I loved it. I have to say, I'm a big fan of Trigger Studios' style of animation. Some people might disagree, but I really think that they nailed it when it came to animating action sequences. They always portray the most important aspects of it, and the choreography flows really well and looks great. Also, they always use a great color palette that just makes you feel good when watching it. And this is true for all of the episode. Plus, the episode has a short but good story about the duality of fate and life. Like, what's their purpose? Should we live like others wanted us to live? Are we free to choose our own path? Should we let go of our most precious possessions, our lives, because of what everybody else wants and expects and has planned for us? It is a very good experience and stands strong as the second greatest episode from Star Wars Visions. The Duel. It is a story about a samurai who shows up to a village at the same time as a Sith and her soldiers. The samurai goes to face the Sith, and in doing so, we find out he actually is a Sith as well. They fight, and he ends up winning and saving the village in the process. This was amazing. The direction, the art, the animation, the fight, the choreography, the characters, and the weapons, it was all so perfectly executed to fit this episode. The Japanese style blends incredibly well with the Star Wars elements, and the plot, although really simple, boasts writing quality. The writers got an interesting theme, and in a 13-minute episode showed how deep and profound Star Wars stories can be without having to put the fate of the entire universe at stake. This was the first episode of the show, and it is the best one of them all. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.